Close your eyes.
The line between fact and fiction can be a tricky thing to parse. Fictionalized accounts of historical events can go a long way to contextualize them, or they can turn a half-true story into a catalyst for the present moment. In David Evershoff's 2000 novel, The Danish Girl, he takes a real historical figure, a 20th century transgender painter named Lily Elba, and he tried to imagine what Elba's life was like and her inner thoughts as she became one of the first recipients of gender-affirming surgery. Some of Elba's thoughts were preserved and published into a diary called Man into Woman, an authentic record of a change of sex. However, Lily Elba's medical records were lost when the Nazis burned down the Berlin Institute for Sexual Research in 1933. The institute was run by the acclaimed sexologist Magnus Hirschfeld and cared for many of the first transgender surgical patients, as well as employing numerous transgender people. Hirschfeld and the director, Richard Oswald, also co-wrote the first pro-gay film, different from the others, in 1919. In 1931, one of Hirschfeld's patients, Dora Richter, underwent the first successful male-to-female gender reassignment surgery. After considering suicide, Lily Elba arrived at Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute, where she would undergo 5 surgeries by German gynecologist Kurt Wernicross, before unfortunately passing away after the 5th surgery when her body rejected the world's first attempted uterus transplant. It has been speculated that Lily Elba was intersex. Her body may have had more female chromosomes than male and may have possessed ovaries. Most of this information, apart from Elba's own memoirs, was destroyed in the Nazi book burnings in Berlin. And for that reason, Ebershoff tried to reimagine Lily Elba's life in the novel The Danish Girl. Ebershoff's novel was adapted in 2015's The Danish Girl, directed by Tom Hooper and starring Eddie Redmayne and Alicia Vikander.
You need to tell me when Hendrik and Lily, But together they kiss. Has it gone beyond that?
Before transitioning into Lily Elba, she was a well-known Danish landscape painter. While at the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts in Copenhagen, Elba met Gerda Gottlieb, and they got married in 1904. Gerda was a book and fashion magazine illustrator. According to Lily Elba's memoir, she first realized she was transgender when Gerda asked her to pose in women's clothing for an illustration.
No, I need the dress.
No.
I need to see how the hem.
No, Gerda, I'm not putting it on.
Well, I haven't asked you to.
Gerda slowly found success with paintings of Lily Elba pre-transition posing as a woman. The Danish Girl erases all references to Magnus Hirschfeld and the Berlin Institute for Sexual Research. It also erases the possibility that Lily Elba was intersex and 3 of the 5 surgeries that she underwent.
Professor Wandercross, what is the surgery?
2 operations. The first, to remove the male parts entirely. The second, once you're strong enough again, to construct a vagina.
As a film, it is less about transgender identity and the process of transitioning, and far more about the marriage becoming strained and dissolving as Lily Elba realizes who she is. This may be all well, as 2015 was a far different time in terms of the mainstream understanding of transgender identity. The Danish Girl as an adaptation went through numerous hands, with Nicole Kidman set to play Lily and Charlize Theron set to play Gerda, and then Gwyneth Paltrow and Uma Thurman. Tom Hooper finally picked it up after the King's Speech in Les Mis. Eddie Redmayne and Alicia Vikander were both hailed as stellar performances. Eddie Redmayne, known for immersive filmmaking, met with Lana Wachowski of The Matrix fame to learn about Lily Elba's story. Alicia Vikander, who's the emotional rock of the story, was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, should have been Best Lead Actress, but whatever, and won at the 2016 Oscars.
I need to see Einar.
Let me help, please.
I need my husband. Can you get him?
I can't.
I need to talk to my husband. I need to hold my husband. I need him.
Anyway, before I introduce the panel, let me say, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Also, we are now monetized, so if you have any pressing questions during this live show, send us a super chat. We are absolutely obligated by international law, human rights law, to answer it. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Movie Night Extra. All of our after parties are available on there forever. Okay, let me introduce the panel. J. Andrew World, illustrator, book cover artist, comic designer, and artist for Give Them an Argument, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza and Bad Takes. Kristina Oakes. You can find her streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/cosmopolitics, and she is organizing our Big Gay June Extravaganza. Ben Carollo is the first trans woman to have a show on TYT, a Rebel HQ contributor, Twitch streamer, and Marxist YouTuber. I, of course, am your host, Forrest Miller. No, I will not be putting on the dress. It's too tempting. Let's start the show.
Yes, put on that dress, Forrest.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I will not be trans by my hot wife. Yeah, so this is like the first. This is like the first movie I think that the panel does not like that we've covered, at least since well, I mean, I guess Babylon I didn't like, but
Yeah, Babylon.
You didn't like Babylon? Oh my god.
I was not the biggest fan.
Land. Let's be real. Let's be real. Like, that's my opinion. Babylon was better than La La Land.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like I think the last one I really hated was what was it, the one about the guy from Mexico, the revolutionary. Yeah, Zapata.
Yeah. Well, I didn't hate that movie. I thought that movie was all right.
Well, it was funny when we had
you were
Andy
disappointed
Kimball on.
in it.
He did like Barb and Star.
But Benny, what's up? Thanks for coming on. And I'm sorry that we I'm sorry we detransitioned you by making you watch this movie.
Damn. Yeah. No, for real though, honestly, my initial thought was like, I feel like I was hate crimed by the director. Like, to be real. Like
Well, he
it
did
was
do Cats,
bad.
so it like makes sense.
Oh my god, that actually tracks super hard. The same guy that did Cats. Nobody let that guy near a movie set ever again.
He was feeling himself because of he was the guy that did the King's Speech, and people really it was before Oscar's So White. People really like the King's Speech. They're like, oh, look at these British guys, they're on camera. So he was feeling himself, and he's like, I could make a movie about, the first, not even the first, but in this movie, the first gender reassignment surgery. Like, I got the clout. He made Les Mis. He's like, I got the clout. I make good movies about Europeans. They're European. Let's get this.
That explains why he cast Eddie Redmayne because of Les Mis. So through nepotism.
I got a question for you. Who was the Danish girl in the movie? Because when they name dropped the name of the film, they weren't referring to Lily.
Yeah, they were referring to the
Gerda.
spouse. Gerda. Yeah. Which, like, to be honest, that tracks super hard. I mean, there's like 6 layers to like pick apart just within that statement. But the main character very much plays on the role of like the trans widow where she lost her poor husband. Oh my goodness gracious. Which, like, on that front, there's 2 issues. First and foremost, the issue is just ridiculous and silly. Like, there's so many other things to deal with in the world that, like, oh no, I found out that my partner is trans. Whatever shall I do? Oh my god. Now, obviously, that can be difficult with people in terms of like their sexual identities and stuff like that. And that's like a whole personal conversation people go through. But it's silly to like present yourself as like a widow and like this type of like storyline, which is all about like, oh, somebody transitioning is so hard for me personally. Literally just decenters the trans person
white girl
in that.
shit, right? Like, it's the perfect like cis white girl. Like, how can I make this transition about me? It's like, well, I got angst. I had a husband, I was getting dick, and now I'm not. And like, and the only other guy that I could possibly get dick from in this situation looks like Vladimir Putin. You want me to
like
get from Vladimir Putin? Is that what you think I'm?
We can't have those godchildren with Vladimir Putin looking guy.
You think I look Ukrainian? Like, is this the situation that's happening right now? So
I think the frustrating part about that though is that the real life person was this like total baddie who's like this like publicly open lesbian and is like, yes, I'm in this lesbian relationship. It's an open relationship, right? And they're like super supportive through it. So like where exactly is like, I mean, they had like a whole plot line about like, oh my goodness, is she cheating on the wife? Like, oh, is Lily cheating on her partner? And it's like, they were in an open relationship when they were live in real life, like this is just everything about that is just so silly. So they take somebody. I know, no, and because like, I mean, I just wish people would think about it because like on some level they're like, oh yeah, this was back in time, so people weren't as accepting back then, so it must have been really hard. But it's like, okay, but you realize the type of people who are going to be the ones that come out in a time like that are going to be the ones who are like, no, you don't understand. I'm like literally, I'm going to be like the biggest lesbian about this right now. Like, I'm going to be like the queerest person out in public. I'm going to be in the news. Like, it's the people who have, it's that like airplane meme, right? It's like the airplane meme. It's going to be the people who are like the most confident in themselves, like outgoing and stuff, that are going to be the ones who are like, yeah, even though it's all the stigma, I'm going to like just live my best life. And that's literally what she did. That's why we even know her name in the first place, because she was literally talked about in newspapers as a publicly known trans person 100 years ago.
Yeah, and also they had her. They followed the actual like fact of having her go to Paris, which the reason that she went to Paris in this movie is Paris was very accepting of I guess alternative lifestyles, if you want to call them that, right? Like and like really anybody at this point in the 1920s in Paris, which they changed it to the 1930s for this movie, I guess, but like in the 1920s in Paris, you could really be whatever you wanted to be. There wasn't these social pressures. I mean, I'm sure there like was if you were like in the upper classes, but they're like in the artist. They're like in the bohemian, and you see that throughout the movie, right?
Yeah.
With like,
I mean, I told the story
or whatever, which I tried to blank out, but like you see that they're in this kind of. I mean, even when they're before they get to Paris, they're in this very bohemian community, and then she goes to the thing dressed as a woman for the first time, and nobody like gives a fuck. And nobody thinks that this is, they know who that is. You know what I mean? Like they know who that is. She's like, oh, I'm getting away with this. Nobody knows I'm me. I'm my cousin. Like, I don't know.
Which she did actually say that she was her cousin or her own cousin or her own sister from time to time. But so that part is true, but I don't think it was presented well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Tom Hopper hasn't directed a movie since Cats, and I wonder why.
COVID.
Oh my god.
James Corden was like, hey, if you don't fucking not direct a movie again, you made me have to fucking show my cat butthole. And if you don't make me not direct a movie again, I'm gonna hit you with the carpool karaoke. It's gonna be car accident karaoke.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
oh my god.
It's just so because we all thought the King's Speech. Like, I watched the King's Speech, I liked it. I'm like, yeah, this guy's potential to be a great director. And then this movie, and then Cats, and I was like,
and like
Les Mis. But Les Mis was fine. But the problem is you can't sing live on set. It's just weird. But I just feel like this movie could actually be remade and done properly because we know more about these people now. And it's just 2015 was a different time. The only person that was really open and trans was Caitlyn Jenner, who could have been a good example for people who came out as
Speaking of car accident karaoke, am I right?
Yeah, but now she's
and the Wachowskis. Let's not forget them.
Yes.
We actually had working people in Hollywood that were respected, that were trans, that could have directed this film.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. But it baffles me that Caitlyn Jenner could have been a good example for people who came out as trans a lot and transitioned much older later in life, and now she's just jealous of all these transgender influencers who are all over TikTok. I'm not even talking about Dylan Mulvaney. I'm talking about there's so many more out there, and I'm like.
Well, it's the same thing with Buck Angel, right? Buck Angel is the first. He calls himself a trans medicalist because that's his word for getting a surgically put in dick. But somehow he's decided that version of identity, right, is different in his mind because he didn't really get the benefits of being in a pop cultural situation where people he was a fucking porn star that that was trying to go around educating people on trans issues. It was not easy for him, and then there's a resentment I think that builds up of when things start to get a little bit easier for people in media. Whoever the first person was ends up getting incredibly resentful, and turning into Buck Angel or Caitlyn Jenner.
But that's the thing though, is there's a reason why those are some of the bigger names. It's not because there aren't, because obviously you've got the Wachowskis, right, where they could have been big celebrities like that. But the thing is that it's really the assimilationist types that are the ones that are going to get picked up by the news, because ultimately most people still don't understand trans people at a very core level. I mean, it's one of the reasons why this movie falls apart so hard is because if you're a movie director and you're writing a movie about a trans character and you're not trans yourself, 9 times out of 10 you're approaching the film from what would it be like if a man really wanted to be a woman, which is just a wrong-headed way to approach it. The real approach is, what happens if you're a woman who is wrongly perceived as a man your whole life, right? Yeah. Just that phrasing, right, can just have a huge shift in wait, oh, that's actually what this is, isn't it? Right? And so all of the scenes where she's hyper fixating on different motions that some sex worker was using and the other women and stuff like that, it's just kind of it turns all of femininity into this purely sort of performative thing that on some level is something that you're going to pick up a little bit anyway, just from watching people participate in society, right? But, and this is where part of the trans experience is kind of defined by this, where it's if you're trans, odds are you're probably going to display some type of behaviors that are in alignment with your gender identity. And I know this is really wild, you're going to get harassed for things like that, right? Straight up, You're going to have people who are why are you behaving so femininely, right? Before you might even realize you yourself are trans. And so it's a whole entire thing where fundamentally there's just this lack of understanding about trans people. And so it's people like Caitlyn Jenner or Buck Angel who are willing to lean into this assimilationist nonsense, or these things where you know, they fetishize themselves in like different ways, and they do all of these like just like awful things that are not in any way, shape, or form representative of like what like regular trans people think. And then you create these like incredibly cringe, awkward characters that are so uncomfortable, when the reality is, like, if you hang out with trans people, and obviously I'm biased here, but I do hang out with a lot of trans people, so I've got some experience. Trans people are really cool. Some of the most outgoing, fun people that you could possibly be around, because
One of my
they're
favorite
people
car
who,
trucks.
yeah, like literally trans people actively decided to be themselves, right? That's like the whole thing, is like being yourself as like an active process, despite having to deal with like a lot of nonsense from people. And so it turns out that trans people end up being some like the coolest, like most charismatic people out there. And once again, I am biased.
And there's this one actress named Cassandra James, who is, I think, maybe the first openly transgender woman to be on a soap opera. And you would think with these old folks who watch General Hospital, they would be incredibly transphobic. They would like just, but they're like, we want more of her character. Like, we want more of her on General Hospital. We want more scenes with her. We want, she's in a relationship with a cisgendered male. And everyone's like, we want, like, there might be one or two comments that are like typical, oh, like she's a man or whatever. But like the amount of people who like accepted this character, this person, and again, it deals with the like, she passes, she's gotten all the surgeries done. And so like my thing is like, it is possible for a lot of these people to, be more, be something. I mean, she's an activist. She does a lot of different things. I just feel like, when you're documenting your transitioning, it might be a lot harder for people to accept, which drives me nuts, because I'm like, it's not a walk in the park. There's a lot of ups and downs, and I feel like this film just doesn't really get into the heart of like, the ups and downs of what it's like to be trans, and like,
well, it does if you're a cis woman in a relationship with a trans person.
That's about it.
The one you see all of her ups and downs, but you don't really see. You never really get into the head of the Lily character, or not the Lily, Lily. You never get into the head of the Lily character, who's I mean, she's just one day she's like like a guy, and then she has a completely different personality as a girl, which is like, I guess that's the way that a cis like a cis man would understand it, like writing the script. But we just talked about Moonlight with Dan from the internet. Like, we just had a long conversation about that. That's a movie about, I mean, it's not about being trans, it's about being gay, but it's a movie, originally written by a gay man about his own experience. That movie felt lived in. That movie felt like multidimensional. That movie felt everything that this feels like it lacks.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's because the problem is like people totally misunderstand what transition is all about, right? Like, like straight up, there's this weird pressure, I think, that a lot of like the media faces to intentionally portray trans people as these like pathetic, helpless creatures that are like the victims of society, and you'll never be like what you really want to be, and this, that, or the other thing. Just this really like, and it's so weird, right? It's so weird because it's so like incongruous with the experience. Because the truth of the matter is, like, they're afraid to like have trans joy. They're afraid to like have people be happy, especially if they're being a dyke about it, right? Like, if you are literally just like, yeah, I'm gonna be a tomboy, I'm not gonna get bottom surgery, I'm not gonna voice train, I'm just gonna look and I'm gonna sound like this, it's gonna be really hot, I'm gonna be popular, and I'm gonna hang out with a bunch of other queer folks too, and maybe be poly about it as well, right? Like, literally cis-hets will, like, their heads will explode. So like, I don't think that, like, literally, like, watching that movie, like, you do poly erasure, right? You do the lesbian erasure of the who is really the main character, right? Which was her wife, right? You get rid of the fact that she was like, Lily was just like this public figure who's like so confident and like doing parties and stuff, like straight up. Like, it just strips all that away, because I think people are genuinely afraid of it. Like, the worst thing in their minds that they could possibly imagine, right, is like some like trans woman in particular just enjoying her life and having a fun time, right? And
at least in ways outside of like the puritanical set of morals that we've imposed as a society, right? Like, at least outside of the norms of like, oh well, if she's in like a relationship with somebody and she stays in that that like even though she's transitioning, right, like it's the masculine feminine thing, if that dynamic is still there, or if she's hiding out in the house and you're like, wow, that's so sad, the wife's out at parties and she's hiding out in the house and kind of being miserable. It's like, well, she's almost being like, it's almost like penance, like she's being punished for the way
it's like
that
a Hays Code thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, she has to die at the end because it's the Hays Code, and you have to punish, your trans people. Apparently, I don't know. Is that in the Hays Code?
On TV shows, they always kill off the gay and trans characters. It's the kind of the same thing. Like, there's a trope where pretty much every time on in a TV show that you have a character that's gay or trans or any kind of anything outside of like a
they did that all in the family with the drag queen, that even lovable bigot Archie Bunker.
Okay. So this is like you just sparked like a reminder of a conversation I was having with somebody earlier about the politics of bimboism, right? And like embracing bimboism and sort of like like a personal expression / like political statement in a sort of way. And like because the thing is, right, there's all this pressure on women in general in society to be ashamed about femininity, where cis women are allowed to express femininity but are expected to be ashamed about it. And trans women, that goes doubly so, where if you're a cis woman and you want to succeed in the world, your goal is to behave more like a man. And if you're a trans woman and you're behaving feminine in any way, shape, or form, then you're super, super punished for it, because you're supposed to want to be a man, because everybody's supposed to want to be a man, because that fundamentally is what patriarchy is rooted in, this idea that masculinity is somehow inherently superior to femininity. And so if you have a character that chooses, no, I'm going to be feminine, I'm just going to be this total baddie and live my best life, then of course you have to punish that character relentlessly, because first and foremost in a patriarchal society is this belief that masculinity should be revered and praised, and femininity is something that women have to do in order to perform their role in society, but also should be deeply, deeply ashamed about that. And like what that way that brings in like the politics of bimboism is, like the politics of bimboism very much is like, no, I shouldn't have to perform intelligence in the sense of like, I'm not going to cater myself to like the perceptions of men and things like that. I'm just going to be unapologetically feminine and enjoy my existence and all of those things, right? All of those things. But so I think that's why a character like the Danish Girl exists. And I say a character because the real life Lily was just genuinely not this person. But like that, and like idea of punishing femininity,
not just from not to interrupt, just like backtracking for a second on a point, like you're getting this from two different sets of cis men. You know what I mean? Like you're getting this first from her actual diary, which is the only record we really have of her written in her own hand, was heavily edited by her friend, who was, I think he was a gay man, but he was like he published her diary after her death, after the Nazis burned down the all of her medical records. And then on top of that, you're getting it from a director. Well, and then you're getting it from the guy that wrote the Danish Girl book, which he's imagining what she is going through based on both her diary and his own, like, hey, this is what I think trans people are going through thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, so you're looking at it from that. And then on top of it, this is a movie that's written, that's directed by a man who's also like a cis man, who's also trying to navigate what he thinks a trans relationship is. And to be honest, they do go back a little bit and add some of like the more, because I think the book is so highly fictionalized that it loses like just the essence of everything. I haven't read the book, but like this is my understanding of it. And I can play a clip where they talk a little bit about this, but like I think they lose so much of it in that moment that like they're like, all right, well, we'll add details from her actual life, but adding details from her life is not going into the mind of somebody who is going through this transition and who's living in a place that's different. It's not America. You know what I mean? Like she's living in Europe at a time when there are a lot of places where it is highly homophobic and transphobic and puritanical, but there's also places that are, one second, my dog's wants to hang out. But
yeah, no,
she's also living in a place where she's going to these cities that are hotspot, like the major cities. You know what I mean? Like Berlin, Paris, like all these places are like known hotspots for people who are living, alternative, non-puritanical, all right, I guess that probably the character.
So that connected dots in my brain. I just want to say this really quick, that like if they were being more true to the actual story, like since you mentioned Babylon earlier, this movie like the first sequence, like there was a few sweet moments that were like, oh, these are some sweet moments before it just went like, oh, what are you doing, right? But like between that and then the end of the movie where with her dying and her final surgery, where it should have been like the 5th surgery and not the 2nd surgery, which was just weird, silly erasure. But the middle part of the movie should have looked a lot like Babylon. It should have been like, let's party, like let's enjoy ourselves, let's be artists, let's get weird with it. Some relationship drama in the middle of that, but then like
the only scene you get of that is deeply is not only deeply awkward, right? When she kisses the guy that ends up being like gay, it's her seeking out some kind of balance again, like some kind of heteronormative balance where, okay, well, she's starting to realize that she's a woman and she has, a separate personality which like, why are you trying to, imply that trans women are just like, it's a split personality thing? That's already weird. But like she automatically seeks out like a guy and she's like, oh, I just lost myself and kissed this guy. And it feels like they're trying to restore the balance again, where it's like a woman and a man. Like, look, trans people can exist. This is a real thing. People are trans, but not only
not
is
something
like,
that's new.
Yeah. Not only is it inherently awkward, not only is it inherently shameful, but like, oh, you're just gonna go try to, mac with some guy again.
No,
like...
for real. Okay, that's a perfect case study in why you need to be careful. As a trans person, why I need to be careful about like the things that I say to cis people to explain things, because like there were just some specific things about like referring to like Lily versus I forgot the dead name as like different people in some ways, which is sometimes like how trans people describe their experience. Because like in my experience, to a certain degree, like me pretending to be a man for a huge chunk of my life, to a certain there was a certain element of playing a character there, right? And saying that character is not really around.
In the biography, by the way, that's how she referred to herself.
Yeah.
So, which I can understand, like trying to find a way to express this without having the language. It makes sense.
Yeah, but they turned it into this weird split. Yeah. Like they turned it into this thing, which is like its own separate thing, right? Like that's a thing, right? Like and like
it's like that movie, Three Faces of Eve, that we talked about with Marina.
It's actually a good movie.
Yeah, but it reminded me of that, where like she walks into the room and she's like a completely different personality. They're like, which personality are we dealing with today? And she's like, well, now I'm Lily. I'm kind of shy and I want to get married and have kids. And then it's like, what personality are you now? And he's like, I am Aina. I am a guy that draws the same landscape over and over again.
Which he didn't do.
Yeah.
It's like, and then like
her paintings are gorgeous.
It's the landscape where he first kissed a guy. You realize halfway through the movie, he's like,
I mean, what did they go to Wikipedia only saw the one painting on the Wikipedia page and just go on from there? Like what the fuck? Like the other thing that drives me nuts is like
Andy's been fired up about this all day, by the way.
The whole color scheme of the movie is based on like that one painting, which is where it's kind of washed out and which is fine. I mean, it's a great painting, but the thing is though, is like both artists, both Gerda and Lily. They're like colors are very important to their work, and like this all the colors are so muted in this, and like okay, you want to tell the story and you want to start off muted, and then as Lily starts to realize that she's a woman, you start bringing in a splash of color here, a splash of color there, almost like the Wizard of Oz, and at the end just be like a Technicolor daydream where she finds acceptance. That would have been beautiful, but no, they didn't try to make it look like their artwork, which is like, if you're going to do something about artists, try to replicate their artwork visually some way in the film. They did that in Moulin Rouge. They could do it in this movie.
And Moulin Rouge is actually better than this movie. Let's be real.
No, they're so afraid. Like, this is the thing. They're like, people are genuinely afraid of the idea of just like trans women just being these little happy dykes enjoying their life. Like, heaven forbid you have like a lesbian relationship that is an open relationship that's just like you're having a good time and you're artists, right? Like, because I like there's all this weird puritanical nonsense that people have in their heads about all these things, and there's just so many layers to this. And like, we also have to point out how like weird and ableist it was for them to like make it seem like the main character had like DID when she definitely didn't have DID, right? That's just ahistorical, and like it paints this weird picture of trans people that's harmful to trans people, so just kind of like harmful all around. to, you know, anybody that cares about human decency, and then just the rejection of like the obvious joy, because there's joy in this painting. It's pretty clear that she's having a good time right there. Okay,
Yeah,
she's having a
this is after she's already come out. This is so her Gerda painted this, and this is after I believe she's already come out to, you know what I mean, like she's already fully living as Lily. And this painting is supposed to be an example of that. But Tom says, y'all are making me glad I missed this one. I feel like I can only provide a bad example for us clueless cis people. Oh, damn, sorry for the slur.
How dare you, Tom?
Yeah, and the other thing too, just want to point out, like Gerda is a great cartoonist, and I mean that in the way like she constructs her figures very expressively, and I love that. So you know, shout out to Gerda. You know, if you want to check out some great cartooning, check out her work for some of that. And I use cartooning in a very abstracted way than what people think of it as, but because you know,
she did a lot of fashion magazine.
Yeah. I mean, like who was it? JC Linedecker, who actually deserves to have a story told about him. And if there's a gay writer out there who wants to do a story with me, I want to do a graphic novel about JC Linedecker, who was the we don't know much about his life because after he died, he had his live-in partner. We're assuming it's his partner, but it's basically his hetero life mate, model, and everything like that, or whatever. It's confusing because we don't have any like hard facts about his sexuality.
So this is how Gerda viewed her relationship with Lily, right? Because Lily's, you know,
how happy.
Lily's obviously, you know, presenting as a woman, and then she's presenting herself as like kind of almost like a colonial male figure in some ways, right? Like she has like the hair and she's wearing the jacket
too. Like remember the fops, the dandy fops.
Yeah, no, she looks like a non-racist Thomas Jefferson or something here.
Oh my god, yeah. No, we stand an old-timey butch cis lesbian and her trans partner, okay? Like that's a classic. That is a classic relationship dynamic in the queer community, okay?
Butch, I see that relationship dynamic on Twitter.
Trans woman. Yeah.
That's like half the people who are like, and check out my OnlyFans. Like,
yeah.
They totally would have had an OnlyFans back then. I mean, have you seen some of those paintings she did?
She would have painted "Thanks for doing porn with me."
I mean, I sent in our chat. Sorry, Benny, you didn't get to see this, but was just two women doing 69. Was one of Gerda's paintings, and there's another great one where she's like, this one woman's tickling the other one's vagina with a feather.
Wow. Okay, that sounds like a very heterosexual interaction. Clearly she was upset about her wife coming out as being a wife. Like she seems like a very heterosexual woman who would have issues with having a wife.
This is her once again painting her wife. This is her painting Lily. You know, lounging.
Those pastels. I mean, those are beautiful.
Yeah, bring some color into this film. My God, might as well make it black and white.
I mean, some of it is. I think that they were going for like the historical romance element of it, which they're always that colored palette, right? Like,
yeah, but like that's fine if you're filming outside, where like, you know, you got the because if you go back, look at the Impressionists, like the Impressionists were painting the light, and even they would have like those dark clouds sometimes around you know, around the cityscape because of pollution and whatnot. So like, yeah, there is some of that, but like there was still light, there was still color, and like
I want to say that Trans Jefferson is Tomisha Jefferson.
Oh my God. No, yeah, like there's so many. I'm trying to think of like what other big issue that I had with the movie. Obviously, like they did do the classic thing of like, oh, like where she's like fetishizing everything in like a weird way, and it's like this performative stuff, which is like really, it's just really silly and weird, and like it's so disconnected from people's actual experience like as trans people, but it shapes a lot of how people view trans people in general. Like there are a lot of people that think being trans is some sort of like fetish or something, And
like a trend that just happened like a couple of years ago.
I don't. A lot of those people seem like they're people that don't get any pussy. Like that seems when someone is like, "Hey, keep your fetishes away from our kids," it's always somebody that looks like they've never gotten pussy in their life, and they're
like Ben
or
Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro. Yeah,
he got mad about the transgender Barbie poster that came out like 2 months ago, and I'm like, she's everything. He's just Ben.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Like seriously,
so I wanted to show
Barbies up in male clothing. No big deal. Like I don't get it. Like,
in their own style. This is the movie that Magnus Hirschfeld, who ran the Berlin Sexual Research Institute, they took scenes from the movie that they made in 1919. It's him and the director Richard Oswald, and this is the first pro-gay film they ever made, and it was at that institute. So they actually did find some of the film from this, and so here's a couple minutes of it.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's silent, right?
Yeah, but there's music.
Okay.
We can still talk over it.
Yeah. No, just a lot of people point out that Wings was the first gay kiss in a film, and that came out a couple years after this, just to kind of put it in perspective.
I love silent films. Pre-Hays Code era, we love it.
There's a scene in this though that I feel like they could have definitely learned from. So the plot of this that I've seen is that he's getting blackmailed for being in a relationship with a man, and he's getting these notes throughout the movie where some guy's like, "I'm gonna tell everyone," and he's trying to come to terms with the fact that he's gay.
Wow.
I mean, it's legitimately like beautifully, like number one, it's beautifully shot.
1919.
Yeah, no, for real. Like that scene right there with the violin was just a very tender shot, and you can see it in his face.
That guy was like homos, and you can, what the fuck, bro?
What the?
Germans have some of the creepiest faces.
God damn it! Giving us a bad rap, man. That's Germans. Ugh. Well, I'm 69%.
And like he's naked underneath that coat.
Yes.
I shows him my dick.
He's fapping you. We know it.
Shows them the dickin'.
I gotta say though, the bone structure of this guy opening up the letter is a lot like Eddie Redmayne's bone structure.
Yeah, they could have just remade this still.
I need an additional 10,000 marks to keep silent. Don't make me wait, or you'll have only yourself to blame for the consequences. And then it's Franz Bolek. That's a good like homophobic guy fucking name. I feel like.
It's nothing and a pleasant business affair. Look at that. Young love.
Look at that.
So this is what I think that they could have like. This is, an attempt to show gay joy, which is very much what Magnus Hirschfeld's whole thing was about. Like they were having parties all the time. Like he was connecting people to all these services. But like the other part of it was that he had all these people living on at the institute, trans people, gay people. He himself was gay and had a partner. Like so I feel like this is like a cool attempt to show. I guess some of those are like heterosexual couples, but
you shouldn't be ashamed to be in love with a twink, okay, Chad?
Yeah. It's amazing how Hollywood could have been onto something when with silent films, but then of course the Hays Code came where they're like, we can't show pussy, we can't show kissing, we can't show homos, we can't show this, we can't be doing, we gotta keep it clean, keep it cut. Even though a lot of the actresses and actors back in the day were very bisexual, very fluid, very the sewing circle. I don't know if you're probably familiar with that term. Sewing circle is like the thing where all the ladies would get together and have a party. But and there were lavender marriages. Like watching a lot of the silent films from back in the day, I'm like, whoa, Hollywood really could have been like more revolutionary if they just actually kept going, kept trying to push those boundaries.
Yeah, well, the other interesting thing is that the Hays Code and the Nazi takeover were like a year apart, right? Like Hitler came to power in 1933. The Hays Code was officially instituted in 1934, and I feel like Germany had one of the biggest film industries in the world with German expressionism, and they were doing some of them in the Weimar Republic, which maybe not the strongest possible government when it comes to fighting fascism, but like they were kind of opening up free expression for a lot of people, at least in the beginning, and so they kind of had like one of the most blossoming early silent film industries out of everything, like out of any country, and they kind of shut down, and America shut down at the same year, and then Europe fucking fell country by country to the Nazis, and as the Nazis went around, they were looking for signs of what they considered like decadence, and of course the first thing they burned in that giant book burning, they took a giant bust of Magnus Hirschfeld and they burned all of the research that he had done into gay couples, into trans couples, into trans people, just like into sex reassignment surgery, gender reassignment surgery. And because Berlin was like the one hotspot, like in America where they're trying to they're still puritanical, like they're not doing this, you know what I mean? Like you'd have to travel to Germany, so they kind of lost decades of research at that point. Just because the Nazis are like, well, here's a perfect sign of something that's making us weak, in the face of the rest of Europe. Like, here's this Jewish, because he's gay, he's Jewish, and he's a fucking social democrat. It was like the perfect trifecta for them. He managed to escape though. He came and he lived in the U.S. and he was miserable after that. He had his,
there was even a time like in America and Hollywood where it's like, oh, I'm anti-fascist, and Hollywood would be like, communist, huh? Like seriously, like watching.
I mean, well, that's like, to be honest, that's still how it is. Like, to be real, like, because like straight up, like most Americans believe a lot of ridiculous anti-communist propaganda anyway, and it comes from these like same movies and TV shows and stuff like that, which is like really funny because like unironically, George Lucas was one of the very few people that actually kind of talk about this a little bit, where he was like, they did an interview and they were like, how do you feel about if you had to make this movie in the USSR? And he'd be like, oh, it would have been way better. Are you kidding me? No, in the United States, you have to like bend over backwards all these advertisers. In the USSR, you just can't say particular things about the government in particular ways, but then everything else you can do whatever you want. So no, yeah, those movies would be way better. Like, and so that's just like a random aside.
In the 70s, there began to be kind of an influx of Soviet cinema and art coming over from the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union was starting to fade, and people started so during George Lucas's time, like it became very apparent that like, no, it wasn't this closed off society in the way that we assumed it was. I mean, it was, but like it, they had a burgeoning like a beautiful like art thing, and like we tried to make it so that I love the fucking Jackson Pollock CIA plan where they're like, we're going to entice artists to leave the Soviet Union by giving Jackson Pollock a bunch of money, because they're like, look at the crazy shit you could do as an American artist. Ooh, and it's like
when like a lot of the trends came from Russia, a lot of the big trends in the United States, like especially like the sort of what we would call today like retro futurism, like originally was that like futurism that came from the Soviet Union. That's like a whole nother aside. But I think one of the big important takeaways from this though is to remember that like, look, all this stuff like about like all the poly trans people that are out living their best life, just being as queer as possible. Like we've always been around. We literally have always been around. There've always been like transgender polycules out there. There's always been like, there's always been like just like these butch lesbians running around doing their thing, and the people are in love with twinks and all that stuff. Like it's always been around. It was only when social media came around that everybody started to realize that all of us queer folks are just hotter and funnier than everybody else, and then they all got weird about it. But like in all seriousness, though,
it's also like the age of mass culture, where like one of the dumbest ideas that we've possibly had within the last 200 100 years is like just because people see different lifestyles, like they're gonna want to emulate them. And it's like, well, people don't have their own minds. Like that's just the assumption that people can't think for themselves, right? Like if you see two dudes kissing like in a movie, like there's still like the idea like, well, if a kid sees that, they're gonna kiss a dude. And it's like there's an assumption that our minds are.
Is it because you want to kiss a dude and you're just repressing yourself?
Yeah.
Well, there's just like a thing that like our minds are so malleable that we can't make our own decisions. And you know, with the culture of like free choice, it's pretty funny that we also have the idea that like, but you can't present those choices, right? Like, you know, like you have free choice. Like that's the big thing that we talk about, like freedom of association, free choice, free speech. But it's like, yeah, but like the second you have an idea that's not like, hey, there's men and there's women, and you know they should get married and they should have kids. Like anything outside of that, people start to freak out because they're like, our minds must be so malleable that, you know, if people see that, if that's represented on screen, you know, like the only thing is that every child will then be gay. And do you want that?
I think there is a small element of truth to that, in just the reality of like, you know, like you can just choose at any point in time to be poly, right? Like you have to like be smart about it and like know what it means and like do your research so that you're not like you know, you have to build a lot of social scripts, right? You have
Joe
to
Rogan was talking
understand
about with do your own
rules
research
are and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, well, you know what I mean? Like you gotta understand the social scripts, right? You gotta understand
you gotta get
how to be right about it. Yeah, just like any other relationship, right? And like even when it comes to like gender stuff, you can get a little funky with it. You can be a guy but be a little bit of a girl about it sometimes. That's okay. Like, you know, and so I do think they were fine
with until the language started getting like people started having the language to describe what that was, right? Like people are fine with, you know, David Bowie, you know,
Freddie Mercury, Elton John, Annie Lennox, like they're fine.
People were kind of fine with that until people started having the language to be like, hey, this is like a, you know, this is like an identity you can have. These are not just like quirky characters. Like there is a whole tradition of this. And they're like, whoa, a tradition.
Yeah,
that could supplant this tradition of just dressing like a fucking slob, which I do too. So I'm not, you know. But
that's
like,
one thing. I don't get. They say our generation is so sensitive. I'm like, you motherfuckers grew up with Bowie, Elton John, all of these very, 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 very flamboyantly queer like men, very queer like you know women who dress very masculine.
Mercury.
Yeah, like seriously. But like they say we don't have and they say that we're sensitive and we don't have a sense of humor. I'm like, didn't we just like laugh our asses off on TikTok for like a week now because some billionaires decided to implode at the Titanic wreckage? Like, come on.
Like, okay, well, because here's the thing though, is like there's an element of unreality to celebrities, right? There's an element of unreality to celebrities, and that's actually part of what leads a lot of this, like, I mean, honestly, like Nazi rhetoric that the Republicans push. Because if the only trans person you know of are celebrities, there are a lot of people that do just genuinely think that like that's like a big city thing. That's a Hollywood thing. That's something for these rich and famous people, because they don't realize that, like, look, you're more likely to encounter a trans person in a trailer park than a suburb, okay? That's just the harsh reality because we live in a deeply transphobic society. So when you're in this middle income bracket, you're one of these like suburbanites, the only queer people you know of are these like celebrities, right? Now people have kind of become fine with gay folks because they're like, oh snap, one out of like, you know, I don't know, 10 people is gay or something like that. So you just know gay people. Like, I'm sorry, if you are a live human person, you know gay people. You know, I think they all were gay. Just be real. Like, I'm just gonna be real, okay? Like, let's be real. Jesus would have loved OnlyFans girls, okay? He hung out with sex workers and washed random people's feet. Okay, like we were
gonna find out like Jesus's whole like, you know, time in the wilderness or whatever. We don't know about like 6 years of Jesus's life. We don't know what he was doing for the other ones. He disappeared. Yeah. Well, no,
we also don't know what he's washing feet with.
Yeah, was he disappeared Paul a cat boy? Okay, we need to know. Okay,
well, he disappeared at 12. And then didn't come back till he was 30, and nobody really asked questions about what he was doing that time. But it'd be funny if like Jesus had like a washing feet blog. Like he didn't come back because he realized like, yo, I could make way more money if I just take pictures of like me washing feet. Like some people are like into that. Like,
but yeah. So like, I mean, ultimately, like queer folks have always been around. We've always been hilarious, and awesome and cool. And people can't handle that. But no, genuinely, there are a lot of people that just kind of can't handle it. But I think with the social contagion thing too, I think there is like an element of like truth to that like seeing queer people just sort of live our lives can kind of give other people confidence to kind of like, you know, like get weird with it, complimentary, right? You know, and that's, I think, good. actually. I think that's good. I think men who are a little bit of a girl about it are pretty cool, actually. I think people, you know, being a little bit more like flexible with themselves in different ways is a good thing, right? And being more open-minded in various ways, like
and it doesn't even lead to a lot of people that, you know, becoming trans or deciding, you know, that, you know, they've been gay this entire time, and like it doesn't in a lot of cases people just, you know, experiment with stuff, and, you know, it's all, I mean, it's all on the spectrum anyway, but like the idea that, like, you know, these binaries exist, I guess, and you're either one thing or another thing, and if you're somewhere in between, or if you're experimenting with, you know, trying to find yourself, like that scares the shit out of people for sure, like that, you know. And they don't mind it until you put it into words, until you have the language to describe, hey, you know, these things exist, you know, maybe like I feel like that one of the most core ideas for a lot of people that don't think too, like, that are afraid to think too deeply about things, that don't want to think too deeply about things, that kind of just want to go through life, right? Like, which is a large portion of people, is that, you know, men exist and women exist. A lot of people have like the Bible, and they're like, oh, Adam and Eve, and like, you are a man or you're like, so we have that as like like the first binary you ever really think about. And for people to consider that there might be more to that, for people to consider that, you know, that might not be true, like that's like almost like eroding the fundamental core thing that, you know, people like have decided that their identity is based around. And you know,
yeah, okay, you triggered a thought in my brain that I want to get out, because this is like, okay, because, and this is something that like somebody else said, and it was actually a cis woman that said this, and it just kind of like clicked in my mind. But basically, like, I'll try to like condense it in the best way I can. Something along the lines of like, look, being trans isn't a choice, so I'm just going to lay that out flat. But on some level, it kind of should be. And what I mean by that is everybody, I think, would benefit from sort of sitting down and thinking about your gender, right? Like, are you a man because you've been put in that default box by society? Are you a woman because you've been put in that default box by society and that's just what you've been told? Or are you sort of actually sort of choosing your gender for yourself? And when you go through that process of like, what is it exactly that I want for my gender identity and expression, and like how I have a relationship with other people around me, then all of a sudden that degree of intentionality gives you a certain degree of confidence to like be masculine in your own way, be feminine in your own way, right? To express your gender in a way that matches who you are more truly as a person. Because a lot of people, they operate on default settings, right? And I think that's a mistake. I think you miss out on a lot of life, because a lot of transphobes, like who almost exclusively target trans women in a very particular way, hate being women, right? They genuinely have internalized this weird sort of cookie cutter image of femininity, and they hate being women, and they're like, oh my God, this is miserable. Why would anybody want this? I'm going to hate the people that are actively choosing this, and not thinking about, well, like, okay, what womanhood are you choosing right now? What womanhood are you choosing right now in this moment? Or is it something that you feel like is being imposed on you? Because those are very different things, right? And so I think everybody would benefit from like sort of actively choosing your gender, if that makes a sense. So like on some level, you don't choose it. It is just a subconscious part of your brain, at least, like, you know, I don't know. I'm not like, we don't have the time to get into the discussion about like Julie Serrano's like concept of subconscious sex, but that is like a whole nother thing. But like, so no, it's not really a choice, but also it kind of should be. Everybody should approach it as a choice, right? I don't know if that kind of makes sense. Is this tracking?
Yeah, like with like my I have an older sister. She's 7 years older than me, and she was always a tomboy. She's just like my father. She was like into sports. She wanted to play drums and not clarinet. She was the first girl to be on an all boys little league field because she was better than the boys, and she had a very her first haircut was very, very pixie cut short, like my mom's, because my mom always liked her short hair. They were investigating her when she was younger. My mom took her to ShopRite. She has her ears pierced, and she's wearing like whatever, a basic girly outfit, not a dress or whatever. This man lunges, yanks my sister away from my mother. Is like, how dare you put your son in these clothes? How dare you pierce your son's ears? And my mom's like, get your hands off my daughter. And with my sister being involved in sports, a lot of people always thought that my sister was going to end up being gay because stereotypes. But me, the very feminine daughter, ended up being bisexual. So she still thinks she still doesn't believe me. My sister, dad, she's like, "Have you ever looked at vagina? I feel like you're doing this to be progressive." I'm like, there were no rumors about you being gay in high school or middle school, right? She's like, "No," I'm like, "But no, there was always rumors about me being a lesbian." I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wish there was like better language a lot of times to discuss like people that like don't fit into that binary. I mean, non-binary obviously, but like I feel like most people are non-binary. Like I feel like most people don't fit into molds of gender that we impose on people because obviously, you know, gender as the cultural rather than like the biological identity that people have, right? Like the cultural roles, like as society moves towards, you know, like everybody being in the workplace, you know, rather than just like men being in the workplace, like in the 70s during like the you know, women's empowerment movement, which, you know, there were good sides too, but also there's the side of it that's like, hey, we need to get like women into the workplace too. As that became more of a thing, like those I think those gender roles started to get very, very confused for a lot of people who then clung to them harder because they didn't want
look at men's fashion in the 70s too. Like you know, they were like wearing like really tiny shorts with neckties and long hair, and you couldn't do that like in the 60s. And that was accepted normal for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there are different layers to it though, and it kind of gets complicated, and like unless you're having a conversation specifically about this, it's kind of like hard to like encapsulate all of the nuances of it. And that's where like I will point people to Julie Serrano's Whipping Girl, which is a very, very good book that kind of introduces the concept of oppositional sexism, which is this like idea that men and women are opposite genders that are in conflict with each other, which is just not true. And that's like a whole nother thing. And then also introduces the concept of subconscious sex, which is different than gender identity. And those are two important things to parse out from each other. And all these things get really complicated because a lot of the baseline assumptions that people have are really based off of like a lot of nonsense. Like even a lot of well-meaning people will say things like, oh, sex and gender are two different things, which is like kind of, right? They're kind of different things, but not entirely, right? Because like, how would a biologist categorize my biological sex? Well, I've got estrogen flowing through my brains, and I've got some parts that people would consider to be stereotypically female, right? You look at things like fat distribution, you look at things like hormone expression, you look at things like brain structure, all of these things, it gets a little bit more complicated than that, doesn't, right? And so all of these things, on top of like the core concept of what is subconscious sex, right? That like to a certain degree, your brain has expectations for your body. And when those expectations aren't met, it can lead to like different issues and stuff like that. Like so many layers of these things. Highly recommend Julia Serrano's Whipping Girl. It is very, very good for anybody who wants to understand really anything about feminism. I think it's just like a pivotal like feminist literature piece. And like anybody wants to understand like just some like bare bones concept about like transness, because I don't know, I just have a pet peeve of like sex and gender are different things, because it is just very much way more complicated than that. And like because everybody operates from that framework, it gets a little bit complicated. But like ultimately at the end of the day, like everybody is going to have like traits or features that people consider to be masculine or feminine, you know, like because we're humans, right? We are not a super different species, believe it or not. We're like a relatively homogenous species compared to like a lot of the animal kingdom, believe it or not. And we're not particularly sexually dimorphic either. And so there's a huge overlap between masculine and feminine traits. And there are a lot of cis women that, like, as you mentioned earlier, get like clocked as being trans, even though they aren't. Because people are hyper vigilant, especially about trans people now, but like have sort of always been about anything that seems like a breach of a very rigid and narrow white supremacist framework of what men and women should be. And so like taking all of those things together, like fundamentally, that's where it comes in the question of like, for gender to be a choice, it needs to be something of like, what is yourself that you are expressing? And you don't need to change any pronouns about it. You can literally just like reconceptualize your own like masculine gender or feminine gender in a way that actually suits who you really are. And like that's just, I think it's so important for people to grasp and like hold on to. And like that, to bring it back to the Danish Girl, which is what we're talking about, is I think a big part of what the Danish Girl misses, right? Where it all becomes, how do I fit into this rigid, narrow box, as opposed to, in what ways am I feminine? How do I express my femininity that is innate and internal to who I am? How do I choose to express my innate femininity, as opposed to how do I mimic femininity? Because those are two very different things. And like, it's one of those things I think most people just do not understand.
So this is a clip of them kind of congratulating themselves for making trans movie. But I kind of find this interesting because, you know, as we're talking about what they missed, you know, they kind of make a distinction between themselves and the book, and like what the book misses, right? Like they're like, oh, well, you know, the book is a fictionalized account of this, you know, written by a cis man that like, you know, that misses all these things. And I find it kind of fascinating. Like if we're going to talk about where this movie went wrong, like this is what they feel like they got right, I guess, within that.
Right.
This movie should not have been nominated for any Oscars. It was nominated for 4.
Have you actually read her script? Because it is written like a Harlequin novel. Like you know, the scene where you know, Lily goes into the production shop and feels all the furs. Like it sounds like she's about to come in that in the script. Like I'm sorry, I'm going to call BS on this woman.
Oh my god, no, this is so embarrassing. Like we tried to keep it as true as possible. It's like I don't know. Are people like that weirded out by like polyamory, right? Is this where I mentioned my 3 girlfriends and boyfriend? Like, is this like I don't understand where like you hear, oh, they're in an open relationship, and you just turn it into, I bet she was really salty about getting cheated on. Let's make that a plot line. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that's what the book is about, and I think the book is far more tawdry even than the movie is. And I think the book, because it's like just some guy kind of writing it, and there's no other books at the time. He wrote it in like 2000, and there weren't other books, I think, where that were like novels where it was like a transgender protagonist. So he kind of just imagined like what she was thinking the entire time and what his wife was thinking. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that they stripped out, was like, you know, their passionate relationship. That, I mean, they did get divorced at some point, and she like married some guy from Italy, but I think that happened long after she
there was a their marriage was annulled in 29, if I remember correctly, and yeah, and then she, I don't remember, she remarried this guy who might have been gay. They might have been beards for each other.
I mean, that's probably what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no actual evidence for this. This is just conjecture.
Like the Roosevelts.
Yeah.
I just like, I don't know. Like there's like everything about this movie is really frustrating. But on that front, I mean, it's just oh shoot, I might have lost the thought that was in my head.
Just think about Roosevelt's there.
I mean, I could see it. I could see it being like, I could see it being like, well, we can't have her be, you know, trans and poly, and you know, also and like the wife
and have a lesbian in it.
Yeah, like I could see them being like, and to have the you know the first transgender clinic that existed, and that whole story. I could see them being like, that's too much for us to put on the public right now. They just got used to having Caitlyn Jenner. Like,
yeah. Oh, that's what. Whenever anybody talks about the conversation moving fast, that's what I wanted to bring up, because that's Julia Serrano's Whipping Girl came out in 2007, fully 8 years before this came out. So it's not that the conversation has been moving fast all of a sudden. Oh my God, everybody's figuring out can you even believe everybody's discovering what transgender people are? What are we going to do? This is a breaking new phenomenon that nobody possibly could know about. There's definitely no trans people we could interview who ask us on the subject. When it's like, okay, what year is this? Julia Serrano wrote Whipping Girl in 2007. We've known what trans people are for like a very long time. It's just that cis people are deeply resistant to the idea of listening to a trans person, right? I mean, and that literally is why there are like tons of trans women out there who have like master's degrees and OnlyFans, because literally people are so transphobic that like, and once again, this ties into specifically the way trans women are perceived and the way femininity is perceived, that anybody seeking to perform femininity in any type of way is quite literally seen as without agency and infantilizing themselves in a weird way, because femininity is infantilized. Femininity is stripped of agency. And so fundamentally, it doesn't matter how brilliant of a genius you are if you're a trans woman, because you are actively choosing femininity. That must mean that by definition, your value can only be connected to your sexuality, because of course, if you can't have children, then what other use do women have? And that is how society views trans women. And unfortunately, a lot of hashtag allies have exactly the same view of women and exactly the same view of trans women. And that's actually why Julia Serrano's book, Whipping Girl, is called Whipping Girl, because the whole idea is that trans women are women that you can hit, that like literally it is women who are undeserving of the basic layer of social decency that is expected that cis women are afforded in like public spaces, if that makes sense, which is something that was hard fought for, but also like is something that has historically very much left out trans women. And so like, as just a random aside, I don't know if you're a woman who dates men, especially if you're a cis woman who dates men, how a man treats trans women in public is a pretty good indicator of how they treat cis women in private. So keep that in mind in your dating life. And I think it's also an important lesson to learn about society, because truly, like, transphobia, specifically trans misogyny towards trans women, is what you get when you live in a deeply patriarchal, misogynistic society and somebody dares to choose femininity in any type of way. And really, it's just misogyny all the way down, to be honest.
Yeah, and with that, Andy, do you want to take us away with the plugs?
All right.
It's starting to get real stormy outside. I don't know if you guys have heard the thunderclaps behind me. They're like, I don't fucking know. It's kind of freaking me out. But yeah, Andy, take it.
And how's Audrey doing?
Yeah, she was down here and like kind of was freaking out. And my mom was trying to get. I don't know how you guys didn't hear any of that.
But yeah, if you're watching us on YouTube, please do those YouTube things like comment, subscribe, hit that bell. And the big ask is to watch the video till the end, because that helps us get discovered by movie fans, and it helps you get to hear that great Conan Neutron song. We're also on Twitch, so please do the Twitch things as well. Throw us a sub. If you happen to have an Amazon Prime account, the big ask is that you can subscribe that way. It doesn't cost you a penny, but that helps us out. So thank you very much for doing that. We are on social media. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So if you're on any of those sites, find us there, follow us, talk to us. We'll talk back, believe it or not. Well, we're not just sometimes. Yeah, we're not just on the screen.
If you get weird with it, maybe not.
Yeah. If you get weird with it, we might not, or we might just screenshot it and talk about yourself.
I'm pretty hyped that I finally got onto Blue Sky.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have to talk with Emo Dragon about that.
Yeah. Well, why Forrest before Conan?
Well, because I don't know, Chris and I are in like a group chat, like and I was like, nobody invited me, and he was like, oh shit, I can invite you.
They're giving more codes out now. I just got a new code like a day ago after like 4 days, and I'm like, it's happening.
Maybe they're ready to start really expanding. That's cool. But we do have a Patreon to help us expand. So if you go to well, I forgot to write that down, and I forgot what it's called.
Patreon.com/movie night extra.
Yes, there we go. Doing good. But yeah, patreon.com/movie night extra. You can help us out at a couple of tiers, and that really does keep this program going. Conan's not here, but I do want to just say, check out his Protonic Reversal. It's on Thursdays. I don't know who's coming up or who was just on, because I also forgot to write that down, but that's okay. That's fine. And you can check the Caterwall page, so you can see bands that we were at, and you might be able to see the back of Forrest's head.
Yeah,
Exciting.
The bald ass back of my head. I hate
Yeah,
that.
you might see my cowboy hat too. So there you go.
Yeehaw!
And Kristina, you got a Twitch channel?
Yes, unfortunately, I'm streaming all the way until the 2nd because I'm dog sick, and so I'm gonna have to miss our Independence Day extravaganza.
Before I completely lose power, like a certain talking bean gets on. Thanks, Tom.
Appreciate that. And Benny, I was trying to collect your podcasts and got distracted by like looking at artwork. Because I do that sometimes, so I did not write down your shows. And but please tell us about them.
Yeah, so I do Bleep Blomp Ben on Twitch. That is like, what day of the week is it? Wednesdays and Thursdays, Saturdays and Sundays, all at 9 a.m. Central. And then I obviously do with TYT. I'm on their show, The Breakdown, at TYT Breakdown. And then obviously Twitter at Benjamin Carollo, although I really have not been posting on Twitter ever since I've been on Blue Sky, where I'm at Bennie.gay, and you should all follow me. Low key, I have managed somehow to become one of the top 250 accounts on Blue Sky.
Is that how you get to drop off the at like the whole long fucking at address or whatever?
Blue Sky social.
Yeah.
No, it's just It's just at Bennie.gay on Blue Sky.
Yeah, but I'm saying like
all that long
is
stuff,
getting is getting onto
you
that.
You can make your own like domain name or whatever.
It's getting so why does everyone have the long ones? I just got on there.
A lot of people just
want to pay for a domain
normal.
name. You know, you got to pay for your own. Not everybody is like Benny mononym haver on BlueSky.com. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But Benny, you got some final thoughts that you want to express about this not so great movie?
Yeah, I don't know. Fundamentally, I think everybody should read Julia Serrano's Whipping Girl. Anybody that watched this movie as penance to the trans community should read Julia Serrano's Whipping Girl.
All right, Kristina.
Why?
You picked it.
I know.
We could have been talking about Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. That's what I wanted to talk about.
Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
I mean, I wanted to do To Wong Fu and talk about Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes. Really,
and then you got mad, and you got mad that Benny didn't want to talk about that.
I know.
So
no, I'm sorry. I just kind of started watching that movie a couple weeks ago, and it was just kind of like not my vibe. And I was like,
it's one of those few movies that's actually aged well, considering all the drag discourse that's happened. I'm like Wesley Snipes, like, but yeah, I mean, this movie should be remade without any like cisgendered heteronormative people behind it, and actually be made and give her justice. Like, I'm just saying, like, that's
I'm
all
trying to think
make
of,
it like Babylon. Make it just like Babylon, unironically.
Yeah. Make it 3.5 hours long. Why don't you? Let's do it.
I'm trying to think of the drag name for Wesley Snipes. I guess West She Pipes. That would be my Wesley Snipes drag name.
Oh God.
Wow.
No.
All right. Andy.
Tax She Don't, I believe is her is Wesley Snipes' drag name. Anyways, no, I just want to. The one thing I did not get to mention was the fact that what's her name? Shoot, I had it right up here. Yeah, Gerda's artwork is heavily influenced by the Yukio. I forgot how to pronounce that word. It's the Japanese screen printing stuff that we saw earlier in this month in The Handmaiden. And it would, if this movie was a better movie, I would be really excited to kind of connect the two of them with like this little piece of art history, because you can actually see like the Japanese print influence on the 1920s flappers that she did a lot of her paintings of. And but sadly we didn't get that. So if besides reading that book that Benny recommended, go look at the artwork of Lily and Gerda, and just enjoy it, because the stuff's great. And I was not familiar with their stuff before this movie, and I'm glad I took the time to really take a look at it and to see it, because they're really quite amazing artists. And
yeah, they really are.
I'm glad that they're on my radar now.
And I feel like it's something you could put in like any house to like really class it up. Like her,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I guess cartoon.
Yeah, that 69 picture, definitely needs to be in my wife and I's bedroom.
I mean, the ones where they're like where they're dressed up as like 1920s ladies. Like I feel like that's
Yeah.
I feel like you could put that in any house, and then the house would instantly be classier.
No, my wife would love that.
But yeah, we'll be back on July 4th. We're gonna be talking about Independence Day. That's gonna be a good time. Thanks for coming on, Benny.
Yeah, it's good to be here.